For over 1,000 years, Warwick Castle has stood as a silent witness to the tides of English history. From its origins as an Anglo-Saxon fort to its transformation into a stately home, this castle has seen kings and courtiers, soldiers and servants, poets, prisoners, and perhaps something else entirely. In this video, I'll be exploring the layered and often unsettling history of Warwick Castle. Not simply the legends, though they are many, but the documented events that may have sown the seeds of its reputation. Within these stone walls, power shifted hands, battle plans were drawn, and countless lives changed forever. Sudden deaths, imprisonment, seances held behind closed doors, footsteps echoing in empty halls. Are these stories echoes of past lives, or the result of human imagination shaped by centuries of history? I'm not here to prove or disprove anything, just to ask, when a place has seen this much pain, power, and mystery, is it any wonder that some say it's still not at rest? Join me as I trace the haunted past of one of England's most celebrated castles. Warwick Castle's story begins in 914 AD, when Ethelfleda, the daughter of Alfred the Great, built a fort here as part of a network to defend Mercia from the Danes. In 1068, 2 years after the Norman conquest, William the Conqueror ordered a motte and bailey castle to be built on the same site. Over the following centuries, the wooden structure gave way to stone walls, towers, and formidable defences. By the 14th century, Warwick Castle was one of the most important fortresses in England. It was home to some of the most powerful nobles in the land, including Richard Neville, better known as the Kingmaker. His political manoeuvring during the Wars of the Roses made him a key player in who wore the crown. But Warwick Castle wasn't only a seat of military power. It evolved into a grand residence, its walls more likely to echo with the sound of courtly life than cannon fire. In 1604, King James I granted the castle to Fulke Greville, a poet, courtier and historian. Greville spent a fortune transforming the stronghold into a stately home. By the 18th and 19th centuries, Warwick Castle had become a place of dinner parties, garden tours and royal visits, hosting Queen Victoria herself in 1858. The Greville family, later the Earls of Warwick, lived here until 1978, when the castle was sold and became one of Britain's most iconic heritage attractions. But behind the waxwork figures and tourist crowds, the castle holds centuries of secrets. Tales of tragedy, betrayal, ambition, and loss. Of people who served, suffered, and in some cases simply vanished from the records. One such woman was Anchoret Twynham. In 1476, Anchoret served as a lady's maid to Isabel Neville, the Duchess of Clarence. Her fate, however, was sealed not by anything she did, but by the suspicions of Isabel's husband, George, Duke of Clarence, the brother of King Edward IV. That year, in late December, 2.5 months after giving birth to her 4th child, Isabel died. Today, historians believe the cause was tuberculosis or childbed fever, a form of postpartum sepsis. But the Duke was adamant his wife had been poisoned, and he blamed Anchoret. In his biography of the Duke, historian Michael Hicks describes Anchoret's trial as deeply unjust. The Duke's men seized her from her home in Somerset and dragged her over 70 miles in 3 days to Warwick. Every stage of her trial took place in a single day at the castle, in front of a jury that included 4 of the Duke's own tenants, and which was overseen by his friends. As Hicks puts it, altogether, it is clear that undue pressure was exerted to secure the convictions. Anchoret never stood a chance. Convicted almost immediately, she was taken from the castle and hanged. Historians agree she was an innocent victim of judicial murder. The real motive behind her execution may have been the Duke's personal grief, but is more likely to have been political. In late June 1477, less than a year later, the Duke was himself arrested and imprisoned in the Tower of London. During his trial for high treason, Anchoret's grandson Roger petitioned the king to overturn the verdict against his grandmother. He succeeded, and King Edward IV issued a royal pardon, declaring the entire affair unjust. I can only imagine the fear, exhaustion, and utter despair suffered by Anchoret in this place. And if Warwick Castle remembers its dead, I can't help but wonder, is she among them? And then there's the story of Thomas Ede. In May 1895, Thomas was working as valet to the Earl of Warwick, one of the household staff keeping the castle running behind the scenes. In the early hours of Friday the 17th of May, making his way back into the castle in the dark, Thomas fell into the dry moat, a sheer 25-foot drop. A watchman found him, badly injured but still conscious. According to a newspaper report of the inquest into his death, when the man tried to help Thomas, his words were desperate. "For God's sake, watchman, leave me alone. My back's broke." Despite the severity of his injuries, Thomas remained lucid. He spoke about the insurance policies he held and made it clear he wanted to be sure his wife would be able to claim them. Doctors treated him as best they could, but it was pneumonia developing days later from his internal injuries that ended his life on the 23rd of May. At the inquest, the coroner ruled Thomas's death an accident. There was no evidence of foul play, no suggestion of suicide. Just a single, tragic misstep in the dark, and a loyal servant, dying not in battle or legend, but dying all the same. Does Thomas still walk at Warwick Castle? Does the spot where he fell still hold the imprint of his fear and pain? When mysterious steps are heard and cries seem to be carried on the wind, could they be his? As we have seen with Anchoret, not everyone who entered Warwick Castle came willingly, and not everyone left. While the upper rooms hosted nobility and guests, beneath the castle lies another story: the dungeon. Built in the 14th century, this space has held countless prisoners across the centuries, with some of its most notorious use coming during the English Civil War. In the 1640s, as royalists and parliamentarians clashed across England, Warwick Castle was fortified for Parliament and became a military stronghold. Captured royalist soldiers were brought here to spend days, weeks, maybe months in this miserable room. The air was stale and stinking, the floor damp, and a single open drain was the only means of sanitation. Dull light came from a small window. There's a narrow chamber to the side of the main dungeon, which may have been an oubliette, a confined hole into which a prisoner would be lowered and left. I don't know how many men died here. Some were released or exchanged, others just disappeared from record. But they left their mark. Etched on the dungeon wall are messages from 1642, and there are less physical reminders. Today, visitors and staff alike report strange experiences in the dungeon. Sudden drops in temperature, the feeling of being watched, shadows that shift in corners where there should be none. One visitor described feeling a pressure on their chest as if someone was trying to force them back the moment they stepped inside. A few claimed to hear voices, whispers or groans rising from the stone. When I first entered the dungeon, it was full of people, a group of young tourists on a summer camp visit, all chattering and taking photos. Surrounded by them, the space held no fears. But when they left, I found myself alone in the dungeon for a good 5 minutes, and the atmosphere changed distinctly. It was so quiet, despite being only a couple of meters away from the crowds, and the air felt heavy. I can't explain it, but I was relieved when a small boy ran down the steps followed by his family. Even skeptics admit there's something unnerving about this dungeon. And perhaps that's because the brutal reality of what happened here, the despair and the punishment, is truly haunting. One of the more curious stories tied to Warwick Castle is that of Sir Fulke Greville, a scholar, statesman and poet in the court of Elizabeth I. Greville was granted Warwick Castle in the early 1600s. He spent a fortune restoring it from a crumbling fortress into a stately Jacobean residence. In 1618, a visitor remarked of the revamped castle that "It seems not art nor force can intercept it, as if lover built, a soldier kept it." Greville, by all accounts, loved this place. But his end would not come here, and that's where the story starts to blur. In 1628, while staying in London, Greville was stabbed by his manservant Ralph Hayward, reportedly during a dispute over the terms of Greville's will. My earlier video on Haunted Warwick gives some more detail on the circumstances. Hayward, realising the enormity of what he'd done, turned the knife on himself. Greville lingered in agony for nearly 4 weeks before finally succumbing to his wounds. His body was brought back home to Warwick, and he was buried in St Mary's Church in a tomb he commissioned himself. So where does his ghost come in? If you do a quick Google about Warwick Castle ghosts, he's one of the main results. But curiously, there's no mention of Greville's ghost in books or articles until the 1920s or 30s, centuries after his death. Even Frances, Countess of Warwick, who, as we will see, recounted tales of a grey lady and other apparitions in her books, says nothing about Greville. Nor does her husband in his memoirs of the castle's history. The Watergate Tower, a 14th century structure that once guarded the river approach, was renamed Fulke Greville's study in the early 20th century. By the 1960s and 70s, Greville's ghost had become a regular feature in castle publicity. In 1973, the Ghost Room opened to visitors, and later the tower became the Ghost Tower, complete with Jacobean-style panelling, antique furniture and a portrait of the man himself. The display was immersive, carefully curated to suggest that something of Fulke Greville remained. Today, the tower has been renamed once more, the Time Tower, referring to the historical attraction that plays inside it, with no mention of ghosts at all. Perhaps that's a sign the castle is retreating from the tale it helped shape. But facts aside, there's still something undeniably atmospheric about this part of the castle. The tower is narrow, half-lit, its walls close in. Greville's ghost may be more invention than inheritance, yet his story lingers. And so do others. Those I've told so far remind us that Warwick Castle has known suffering. But it has also known believers. People who lived here, who walked these corridors by candlelight or listened to the creak of the floorboards in the small hours, and often sensed they weren't alone. Among them was perhaps the castle's most famous hostess, Frances, Countess of Warwick. Daisy, as she was known, spoke openly about her belief in ghosts. In her 1929 memoir, Life's Ebb and Flow, she wrote, "There was much talk of ghosts in those days. My mother-in-law was always sensitive to the psychic influence of the castle, and I shared with her distinct impressions that many of the great rooms and corridors there were haunted. In the face of much chaff and scepticism, we both maintained and defended our belief in ghostly visitors." Daisy's mother-in-law, Anne Greville, the fourth Countess of Warwick, was a committed spiritualist. In Memories of 60 Years, which he wrote in 1917, her son, the Right Honourable the Earl of Warwick and Brooke, confirmed that seances were held at the castle. Archdeacon Colley came to the castle several times and held seances in the oak bedroom, a dark and rather gloomy chamber. He brought a medium from Birmingham, and I believe they raised, or saw, a little girl carrying flowers. Documents found among Anne's personal papers, now held by the Warwickshire County Record Office, back this up. They record seances held in various rooms of the castle and name the spirits contacted: Edward, Sarah and Richard, all of whom identified themselves as servants. There's even evidence that Anne attempted to uncover a hidden secret in the castle, supposedly left behind by Edward, though she never found it. The oak bedroom is now referred to as the Kenilworth bedroom, and it's often called the most haunted room in the castle. This may be to do with its reputation as the place where Daisy and her mother-in-law held seances with the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. Cold spots and sudden chills can be felt there even on the warmest days. Visitors speak of feeling watched or of a heaviness in the air that they can't explain. One guest said the temperature dropped so sharply she could see her breath. Another reported a sense of dread so overwhelming that she had to leave the room entirely. The most dramatic moment came with a photograph taken in 2016. Captured inside the Kenilworth bedroom, the image appears to show a faint, pale figure standing behind the photographer by the window. The room had been empty when the picture was taken. The Earl recounted other hauntings too. A lady in white riding a ghostly horse through the staterooms at midnight. The spectre of the dun cow, a beast slain by legendary Guy of Warwick, seen in the courtyard. And one that his wife and mother both claimed to witness. An old woman who glides along the corridors in daylight, slow and silent, always turning her face away. She is, he said, gone almost as soon as seen. In his usual no-nonsense way, the Earl concluded, "I have learned to believe that if you are susceptible to influences and manifestations, Warwick Castle can supply all you need. My own inability to see things has occasioned me no regret." Not every ghost story at Warwick is steeped in séance or family lore. Some come from the whispering edges of folklore. One such tale is that of Moll Bloxham, a local woman said to have cheated her customers and paid a spectral price. According to legend, she was caught and cursed, and now her spirit appears as a shrieking, howling presence near the old dairy walls. It's a tale that blends punishment with moral warning, and if you're curious, I explore her story more fully in my earlier video on the ghosts of Warwick Town. But whether Moll was real or a fairy tale to scare children straight, The fact she's remembered at all says something about the castle's hold on imagination. And as J. Harvey Bloom said in his book about Warwickshire folklore in 1930, the tale is certainly of very respectable antiquity. Imagination, or something more, continues to echo through these halls, not just in stories, but in sounds. In 1952, a newspaper article reported on unexplained footsteps pacing the castle at night. Mr. Hollyoake, who'd served as the castle estates agent for over half a century, spoke of a corridor near the chapel that had been haunted, in his words, for generations. "The footsteps are deliberate," he said. "They pace the entire length of the corridor, then stop. Then, sometime later, they return the same way." He explained that in the 1880s, a previous castle employee spent weeks sitting up all night to catch the source of the noise. He heard the steps clearly, but found no one. Mr. Hollyoake also said that the Countess of Warwick herself believed that this ghost was friendly, despite often finding her personal papers thrown from her desk to the floor by unseen hands. No tragedy seems to be tied to that corridor. There's no name I can find to link to the presence. There's just footsteps, pacing their eternal route. Warwick Castle has endured for over 1,000 years, not just because of stone and strategy, but because of the lives that passed through it. Some noble, some poor, all important. Their stories linger in the air like breath on a cold glass. This place has been a witness and a keeper of too much to ever be quiet, and its stones remember everyone. Anchorette's terror, Thomas's final breath, the prisoners whose names we'll never know, the countesses and seers searching the silence for something beyond. Whether through footsteps in empty corridors or a sudden shiver in a summer room, something holds on. Maybe what haunts Warwick isn't just ghosts, but memory itself, looping, lingering, and settling like dust in the corners, reminding us that nothing and no one is ever truly gone. In a place where so many lives ended, maybe the story was never meant to. If you found this journey through Warwick Castle's haunted past compelling, please like the video, share it with anyone you think might enjoy it, and subscribe to the channel. There are more stories and more shadows still to explore. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep looking for hidden realms.